Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now for today's video, we've got a really special one for you. We're going to be joined by Geoff Morphy, who's the CEO of Bitfarms. This is actually my second largest position in the Bitcoin mining space, and there's been a ton of activity over the last few months that we want to catch up on in today's video. Now before we get into it, please take a second, hit the like button, you guys. It's a big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let me know in the comment section below if you're currently holding shares of Bitfarms, how you think their strategy is unfolding in South America, and what your price target is on this stock for the back half of 2023. Now with that being said, let's get into today's interview. Okay guys, so that's right. We've got back by popular demand Geoff Morphy, who's the CEO and president of Bitfarms. This is a company that I personally hold. I'm really excited about some of the prospects and opportunities with this organization. Geoff, thanks so much for being with us today, and I can't wait to get into the discussion.
Bryce, thanks for having me and us back on your program. Thank you.
You bet. Yeah, you're welcome anytime, Geoff. To kick things off, we were just talking about this before we started filming, but I know you got back from a busy week in New York, and there was a lot of activity. You had the analyst community there, very well attended. Can you give us a quick update on what was going on there and kind of the general consensus from the analyst community?
You're right. It was a busy week in New York. It was really a double header. It started off with the H.C. Wainwright conference, which was the better part of 3 days. So a panel presentation, pretty heavy with the other CEO miners, active discussion on what makes us different and special and everything else. So that was a pretty interesting topic, but a lot of discussion about the upcoming halving. Quite literally many one-on-one meetings with investors and prospective investors, and then a corporate presentation all under the H.C. Wainwright umbrella there. And then Thursday, we had our second annual Analyst Day. Last year, we came to Quebec, and we showed these research analysts our own facilities and showed off what we built. And I think they really liked that. So this year, we went to them, and we had 25 plus people in the room, many more online. And we put together about 12 of our management personnel, from HR to IT to production to South America, and we all let them talk about what they do best, really taking them out of their element, their day-to-day chores, and putting them in front of the Wall Street crowd. I have to take my hat off to the team, because very few of them have ever been in that element before, and they gave great presentations, and we actually carved up a lot of time for Q&A as well. So some of it was just completely ad hoc and just allowing the Wall Street people and investors in New York just to ask their questions and get unvarnished responses. So we are known as one of the most transparent, most respected leaders and reporters and timely reporters. And once again, the compliments from the research analyst in that regard.
Yeah, most definitely. That is impressive, and I think most people in the world have not been in that situation. So I'll give your managers some credit there, Geoff. Now you mentioned you were talking about some of the ways you've differentiated yourself, what's unique with Bitfarms, the halving coming up, some of your operations. So I know we talked about this in our last video, but can you give us just a quick high-level update on the company and operations, maybe for people who are unfamiliar?
Oh, sure. We continue to really work the expansion here, and it's all geared toward halving. The halving right now, I think, is expected on about April the 16th. So getting all of your accounts in order before then is incredibly important. As I said on the last show, we do not want any debt. We do not want any construction liability overhang. We don't want any lingering payments on miners. We want to be lean and mean going into the halving, because the margins are going to be compressed. We don't know where Bitcoin price is going to be at that point. Like, maybe it'll be double where it is now, and we'll get about the same type of hash prices at that point. But we have to be prepared for what happens if Bitcoin price doesn't go up there and it doesn't get like the margins really get compressed on us. So we already operate one of, if not the best, sort of cash flow generated from operations and adjusted EBITDA companies in the business, and we continue to be there in the future. So having everything in good shape, we think after the halving is going to bring opportunities for us, because the halving, as it looks right now, is going to be a challenge on everybody, and those companies that do not have everything tight and good margins are going to suffer. And we think there's going to be a number of miners and other companies in this sector that can't make it. It's not going to happen right away. Like, these companies have a habit of hanging on there for 2 or 3 months, but we think probably this adjustment period is going to follow the course as it has in 2020, 2016, and run sort of give or take 5 months or so. And you need to have the liquidity and balance sheet to be able to weather that, challenging period. And we are going to be there. But as you said, what are you doing now? So between now and the halving, we are actively building 50 megawatts in Paraguay at a new site called Paso Pe. It's only a kilometer away from our Villarrica site. And that's exciting. We've got a new robust contract. It's all hydropower. It's about 3.9 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's pretty good. It's not amazing, but it's not bad. I think it's on the better side of 4 cents. And I think most miners say about 4.5 cents, sort of below 4.5 cents is good. But we've announced that of that 50 megawatts, 20 megawatts is going to be the new MicroBT hydro containers and hydro miners, which are super efficient. And it's our first time going there. And we have worked very actively with MicroBT on a collaborative arrangement toward putting this order together and really taking us into the next sort of level of efficiencies with hydro. And hydro is, instead of immersion cooling, where you would put miners in dielectric fluid and keep them cool through sort of fluid cooling rather than air, which we use in our other facilities, it uses small little tubes pushing water through, cold water through, that you actually circulate sort of through the miners, not subjecting it to water spray or anything like that inside the miners, but keeping them cool that way. And because of that, you're able to really run these miners a lot hotter and get better specs and better efficiencies. They're in the low 20s in joules per terahash, as opposed to right now, corporately, we're about 37 joules per terahash. So it's those type of improvements in miners that are going to help you in the future, as well as running them with incredible uptime. And so we've got a lot of high hopes for this route. I think we're one of the miners that's going in this route, where the other miners I heard on the panel were recommitting to immersion cooling, capital intensive, and frankly, our experiment with immersion wasn't all that successful. It cost us a lot of money, and the results weren't as good as what people through the industry are saying. So we're expanding, good expansion there. We're finishing up Baie-Comeau right now, which was an acquisition, and we're adding megawatts there. So, we're on track for, we announced as a milestone, 6.3 exahash for the end of September, and 7 so far, hopefully much more than that, actually, the end of March. So we're on track.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, to say the least. Geoff, I don't know about the hydro. Anytime I pour water on my computer, I don't know if the performance goes up. No, in all seriousness, efficiency, you mentioned that, and I know you guys have made that one of your key priorities at Bitfarms, in addition to that really safe and secure balance sheet. And I'm really on board with both of those ideas from an investment stance. Now, efficiency specifically, I had a question about that. So it came out last month. I think your exahash, or Bitcoin per exahash, sorry, was 75.1. And you've traditionally maintained kind of that first or second place in terms of that efficiency metric. What is it about Bitfarms or your team or your operations or facilities that has enabled you to be so consistent and so efficient month after month after month?
Yeah, it really has been month after month. And we know the other miners will constantly trying to get more uptime, and I think we're the benchmark. Everybody tries to get to Bitfarms, and there's a couple that are succeeding, and a couple of others that are actually pretty large significant miners that are far below, so they've got a lot of room to improve, but I think it's tough for them to achieve that. And I think we do it through the fact that we're 6 years old, the fact that we've got an operations team that have been here and through the multiple iterations and know how to operate equipment. So we've got our proprietary mining management software system that I think really offers us a really big advantage. I think that's self-developed internally, and the type of things that we can do with that miner management system, combined with the fact that we have our own electricians, combined with the fact that we have our own repair labs. But like that system now, when every miner is scanned in, we know where in the rack every miner is. We know when the performance of that miner starts to degrade. Maybe it's heat, maybe it's a breaking fan, maybe it's a circuit board, but we get alerted. It sends a ticket. A technician goes out there, gets the miner. Maybe it's a reboot and it's real quick, but maybe it's a hardware failure and they need to fix that. So they pull it, they update the ticket, it goes to the repair center. Everything's on a time clock because we need to make sure that our capital is invested in operating it optimally. And so then the repair lab has it. They fix it, their time is measured, and they go and reinstall it back in the rack, and it's mining. So uptime is incredibly important. And unlike I think a lot of other miners that guess at their uptime and think they're doing well and don't even know which miners are down, we know it. And actually, we spent a fair bit of time trying to find the programming that would tell us what was theoretical 100% of a miner, because sometimes you're on normal power mode, sometimes you're on high power mode, sometimes you're on low power mode, and you need to be able to figure out what is theoretical 100% so you can measure against it. You can only gauge yourself in terms of performance if it gets measured. So we know where that theoretical 100% is, and generally we're up around 98%, which is great. We're always striving for higher, and these better miners may get there, but we think MicroBT and their miners, because their tanks are more resilient to voltage and atmospheric conditions and things like that, and so that they help us get good uptime. But I think it's the team and our software that really allow us to achieve those month in and month out top decile results that we're looking for, and we're going to continue to strive for them. It's a difference maker, and all of that generates cash flow, which helps you, Bryce, as an investor.
Yeah, it sure does. And the general theme I see here is you guys run a tight ship, right? And that starts at the top. So you have to commend yourself, Geoff. But everything you guys do, you monitor, you measure, you improve. And that's my perception of it. But I think that is really the difference maker, not to mention you've got the experience, the tenure. So that's great, and we look forward to continuing to see you right at the top there. We talked about that big MicroBT purchase in our last video and some of the expansion plans, so that's all catalysts on the horizon here. Now, speaking of expansion, you guys talked about 6.3 exahash by the end of the month. I know you just threw some figures out in the last response. Is that still realistic? You're still on track there? Do we see any change in plans?
Well, we're not many days away from the end of the month, and I think our last reporting was 5.6, and getting to 6.3 seems like a pretty good distance, but we're getting there very nicely. So that will be achieved through Baie-Comeau, which we had talked about going from about 4.8 to 5 megawatts there, where it was, to our full 11. That relies on the local utility planting some poles and some new hydro lines into the facility so that we can operate 11 megawatts. Also going along with that is the fact that we had to bring in some new miners there. Most of those new miners are in place, they're racked, they're ready to go, so we're just waiting for the hydro. Initially, they had talked about installing that in the first week of September, and they backed it up to the third week of September. We're still awaiting logistics, but we are sort of looking very good at being able to turn that on Sunday, October 1st. So there's also, we had hoped if they could do it beginning of September, that we could turn it on at that point. But then when you get into capacity charges and demand charges, some of those things you pay for the peak rate for the whole month, So if we were to turn it on towards the end of the month, we'd have to pay a whole month of extra charges. So we're very much looking forward to like pretty much the 1st of October for that. And then the other place it's going to come from, and really the biggest part, is Argentina and our Rio Cuarto facility down there. We have unlocked the ability to bring miners into the country since April. Those miners continue to arrive. We've had a lot of arrivals already. We've got another truck arriving tomorrow. But to get to our 50 megawatts, which is the maximum design build on that facility, is looking very good right now. So I know internally we're ramping up, but we need to get that last mile to the 6.3, and I'm feeling pretty good about it for October 1st. So that's great. And then we got 7 exahash for March 31, and frankly, we should be able to get there and more.
Yeah, it's all coming together. October 1st, you heard it here first. We'll give you the day, Geoff, and make sense about the monthly billing for sure. Now, you mentioned, I want to talk about the debt strategy too, but because you just mentioned South America and some of the expansion there, what is it about South America that really intrigued you guys? Obviously, it costs money to import all these miners and to move stuff around and for leadership to travel. What is the big draw there, and why are other miners not taking advantage of it?
Well, our 2 founders are from Buenos Aires, Argentina. They're no longer involved in the day-to-day affairs in the management team, but they're still on the board and still very much involved in the company. Very entrepreneurial guys. Good leaders, good mentors for all of us. And like the one thing I've learned about doing business in South America is you need good people in the market itself. And would we have ever chosen Argentina to go to without the 2 of them being residents and having their connections there? Probably not. But they championed it. They have the network. They were the ones that found the opportunity with the private power company called Albanese. Albanese is a decades-old company. I think they've got 7 power plants in the country. They provide power to the grid. Most of it's natural gas, but I think some of it's hydro as well. But very solid company, well respected. But in this particular zone in Rio Cuarto, an agricultural area, the economy is such that they weren't drawing full power. This was a power plant that was built for the grid, and it wasn't being fully utilized. So it was a win for them to contract with us to basically allow them to turn on 2 turbines that they weren't otherwise turning on. And it's a win for them. It's a win for us because in exchange, because natural gas, this is the 2nd or 3rd largest reserves of natural gas in the world. And unlike a lot of other parts of the world, it's locked in. Like they don't have an LNG terminal. The pipelines moving out of the country don't allow a lot of exportation of natural gas. So we always look for places that have most places surplus and stranded electricity. In this case, they had surplus and stranded natural gas, which they can turn into electricity. And as a result, they gave us a better price. So we are telling the world right now the average cost of electricity there year round is about 3 cents US per kilowatt hour. And right now it's winter in South America and it's higher cost. So we're about 3.6 cents per kilowatt hour right now. And as we optimize the plant for 50 megawatts, that price will come down because it will go from a mix of grid and private power to mostly private power at the better price. And then as we round the quarter into October, it becomes summertime there for about 8-9 months. They have more surplus electricity and natural gas. So the price will come down. It could be about 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour. That takes us to that sort of 3 cent sort of average for the year. 3 cents per kilowatt hour is amongst the lowest you'll see amongst any of the miners. And they just really aren't on the world supply and demand type of forecast. So we expect it to be steady and reliable and lower cost. And we think as we get in there and get operating, we can reduce the price a bit more. Paraguay is similar. Paraguay is not natural gas, it's hydro. They've got the 2 big dams, the Itaipu in the north. It's the 2nd or 3rd largest hydro dam in the world. Surplus hydro, wonderful place to be in Paraguay. And we are under the small franchise called Cliffs in one area is about 3.6 cents. The contract with the national distributor is about 3.9 cents. It's not subject to inflation like it was in the past. And what we have heard is that when Paraguay first put together this Itaipu dam with Brazil, that they took out 15-year bonds. They had promised people that when they finished repaying the bonds after 15 years, they would pass along the savings to consumers. That happened about a year and a half ago. They haven't passed on the savings yet, but that's a political hot potato, and we think that they probably will at some point. So we might actually see a reduction in hydro rates in Paraguay. And it's also a jurisdiction where the local state distributor has embraced what Bitcoin can do for the whole economy. They had a very weak infrastructure system in the past because of their revenues and expenses. And on the back of crypto, where they've pretty much dedicated about 550 or so megawatts to crypto, they plan on basically partnering with miners like us and others that are coming into the country to rebuild their whole grid and infrastructure that'll benefit the population for decades to come. So it's a very receptive area to crypto mining and what we can do for the economy and the security of electricity for all their residents. So this is another win-win within Paraguay.
Yeah, it seems to me it's really turned into quite a competitive advantage there, and South America in general is really embracing the power of blockchain and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So to have that first mover advantage, to see it all come to fruition here, that was one of my biggest kind of concerns with this investment when I made it, Geoff, was getting through a lot of that red tape, having to deal with multiple governments. But you've navigated that really well, and being based in Alberta here, I know all the frustration with trapped energy, and being able to harness that and take advantage of it, plus help the grid stabilize, is, like you say, a perfect situation, right?
Well, Bryce, South America is, I think it provided a discount to our stock for a while because, just like your impression there, it's risk and whether Bitfarms can pull this off. And I think once we are able to announce that Rio Cuarto is up and running, we've already proven the success of Paraguay, and we've got the new project there. But Argentina was a particular concern. So when we can actually say it's finally up and running and doing what we expect, hopefully some of that discount comes off and people breathe a sigh of relief and can see we're doing it, particularly when we start doing it with some of the lowest cost electricity around and we start generating surplus cash flow from that operations. But in terms of South America, yes, it's been 2.5 years of at times pulling my hair out, other times celebrating, but we've put a great team down there now, and they're trained, they're executing, and now I think it's one heck of a barrier of entry to anybody else. People are going to realize it's a great place to diversify to, and costs are lower, but you just don't go there overnight. And it's going to take others, frankly, years if they want to catch up to us, even if they want to.
Agreed. And you need that local knowledge element, which it sounds like you guys just kind of lucked out with. So that's great. Now, the next question, I wanted to talk about the debt strategy, and I guess I shouldn't say lucked out. The opportunity presented itself through the founders is a better way to say that.
Yes.
So now the debt strategy, I think you did a pretty good job of explaining why it's so important to go into having with as little or no debt as possible. I know you've publicly said zero debt is the goal. So I was going to ask about that. I feel like we addressed it, but if there's anything else to add there. And I was curious if the company's HODL strategy, because that can relate to debt, if there's any change there, because I know right now, very similar to a lot of the miners, you're kind of selling monthly, maybe 80-85% to cover operational costs, which makes sense. I think that's the way I'd do it as well. Do you see any change to that going into halving?
Okay, first on the debt, that's really easy. We had debt. In fact, we had a lot of debt. Middle of last year, we had 165 million of debt. Part of it was tied to our Bitcoin balance, Bitcoin loans, and things like that to help fund expansion without tapping shareholders and diluting them. But then we realized that this was a problem, and we addressed that, and we paid it down. Now, we still had some term loans for equipment. Many of those were we're paid off. Earlier this year, we actually managed to negotiate a nice discount on some of those loans because of a bankruptcy of one of those particular lenders. That helped a lot too. But here we are. We've got one loan left. It's reducing monthly. We're about $11 million now, and the final payment will be in February, and we will be at zero. And there's no intention of taking any new debt, at least sort of in the foreseeable future with the way hash prices are and going into the halving. So yeah, that's on track, and I'm confident it's going to be paid off on time. Now, switching gears to your other question about the HODL. Yes, it depends on hash prices. It depends on surplus cash flow from operations. But generally, that's the way we're looking at our HODL strategy right now. So as you look at monthly, when we add a few Bitcoin to what we're doing, it's basically retaining Bitcoin that we mine, but the others we sell to generate revenues to cover our cash costs. So really what you're seeing is if we're covering our cash costs and there's some Bitcoin left over at the end of the month, that's what we add to our HODL. In the Analyst Day last Thursday, we also talked about sort of that we've hired a trader, we put internal controls in place over the last 6-7 months. So now we actually are starting to do a hedging program on our Bitcoin HODL, and frankly, it's becoming a more sophisticated company and a more of a commodity-based business. Traditional mining businesses and lumber and oil and gas have been doing it for years. It makes sense that miners like us, as we grow more sophisticated, take on more of a hedging strategy as well, so that we can protect the downside. So if Bitcoin price falls, that we're not going to be at the mercy of the markets, but without giving up very much upside, so that if Bitcoin takes off, that we don't compromise that. So after a lot of work, we think we've got that figured out now, and we've got a risk manager and portfolio trader and a risk committee, and they're starting to absolutely execute on that program. It's not going to be a heavy program. The board has made sure that we're not really at serious risk or exposing ourselves, but we are starting to take that next level of being able to manage our treasury more effectively and safely. And I think long term, well, some of our investors want pure uncluttered upside. We're not giving away very much, but I think the other investors, knowing how volatile the marketplace is, they want some downside protection. So do we, to protect our cash flow and the longevity of this company. And we've taken that step.
Sure. It's really interesting to see all the similarities between oil and gas. And as I mentioned, I'm in Alberta. So to see all this hedging coming in and some of the futures activity, it starts to make a lot of sense. I know people in the comments have been saying dividends may be on the roadmap for a lot of these companies and some of the benefits to short selling and options trading and stuff like that. So lots to come there, and we'll try and get some questions for you in that on our next one. The last question I had, Geoff, is from a subscriber on the channel, and it talks about they talk about some of the other companies getting into high performance computing, AI verticals, NFTs, some of that kind of stuff. Is there any talk of that with Bitfarms? My general feeling is it's a pure play miner. Is that kind of still the strategy, or are you entertaining some of those other opportunities?
We're a pure play miner, but I don't think we would be a good management team if we didn't look at the opportunity. And what we're discovering right now is a very different business. Like Bitcoin right now, Bitcoin mining, we have no customers. We have no real front-facing staff that really have to take care of customers and contract churn and things like that. If you go into some form of high-power computing or AI, you're going to have customers, you're going to have contracts, you're going to have churn. You need to take care of clients. It's a different type of business. So you don't go into it without a solid understanding of what you're doing. And we're not adverse to trying to build that team, but we need to know the facts and the factors here. And it's an expensive undertaking. They don't use as many megawatts as we do, but it's about $40 million per megawatt to develop. There's a huge amount of capital. So you have to make sure that you understand the components and the opportunity here. Like as we look at Bitcoin mining and the halving coming up and the halving in 2028, and then measure that against AI and the explosiveness that people are forecasting between now and 2031, like, what are we good at? We're good at building data centers, and we're good at operating data centers. So right now that's purely Bitcoin, but could it be AI or high power? Yes, but it uses a different type of server, which we're not familiar with. So there's a fair bit of research, and like we've said it before, like we don't want to be at the bleeding edge of everything and take all those expenses. We'd rather be a close follower and learn by other people's mistakes. I think that's why we're doing the hydros rather than immersion. AI, we've talked, like right now they're using the NVIDIA GPUs, and I read commentary that it's going to go to ASICs in 2025 or so. So you're already looking at a technology change there that like could render all the GPUs like into second setting category like within 2 years. So I think you have to be smart about this, and you can't jump into it. Some of the other miners, because they were mining with GPUs in the past, they had them. Now they're just when things went to proof of stake and those miners really couldn't be used in our business anymore, they searched for how can we repurpose these miners. Some of them had firmware where they couldn't be programmed, and frankly, those became boat anchors for some of our colleagues, peers. Others were usable, and now they're magically into high power computing because they had the equipment and they're trying to get some utility out of them. Some of them are making the jump legitimately into new GPUs and doing more. And it's an opportunity, but you certainly have to be ready. And there's been no decisions made about us going into that. There's a lot more research before we ever go there. We need a good business plan. We need it to be vetted by the board and everything. So right now we're concentrating on our own mining, growth, improved efficiencies, the halving, and then beyond. And we think there's going to be a lot of opportunities that come out of the halving. So that's what we do best, and that's what we're going to capitalize on over the next 12 months or so, for sure.
Great answer. Yeah, for the record, I fully like that strategy. I'm a strong believer in play to your strengths, and I'm bullish on Bitcoin. I invest in Bitfarms for exposure to Bitcoin, and you're the most efficient at finding it, or creating it. So that's great. Geoff, that's all my questions. This was a great interview. I always love touching base and getting some FaceTime. I'll kick it back to you if you have any final thoughts or closing comments, and we can wrap it up here.
Actually, I think I just did it. Stay tuned. Like we've got some exciting things happening before the halving. Who knows what's going to happen after the halving in terms of being opportunistic. And then, like as history repeats itself, and I said this during the analyst day, you got to be invested. Like you got to go. Like if you go back to 2021, and for your viewers that were into Bitcoin at that point, you'll realize like the astronomical, explosive aspects of Bitcoin at the time. And I reflected that it seems like it's been ages ago, but when the regulators would call me and say, what's going on with your stock? It's up like 8%, 10%, 15%. And I said, it's Bitcoin price. It's up. There's nothing that's changed. And then at 10%, it hits the circuit breaker and they halt your stock for a little while. So there's a cooling off period. And there was 2 or 3 days. I remember the circuit breakers going twice in a day on our stock because we'd be up 10+% in the morning, and then they'd halt us, and then there'd be another 10% or so in the afternoon. So with that type of explosiveness with Bitcoin, and when that bull run resumes, I think later in 24 and into 25, as I think we all hope and expect, like you got to be buckled up. You got to be in position. And Bitfarms, if you go back to 20 going into 21, we had debt. We didn't have access to the capital markets. This time we are positioned. We're ready to go. We have extra megawatts, like this 100 megawatts in Paraguay that we just signed, another 11 megawatts in Baie-Comeau. Like those are all ready to go when the mining economics change in 24 after the halving. So we are far better positioned than last time, and we're ready to go. Like it's going to be a fun sort of couple of years or so here.
I love it. I'm buckled up. I too remember those days, Geoff, the 10, 15, 20s. I know we've had a few recently, moving both directions, but I think long term we've got the right idea here, and we will see that growth come. So appreciate your time. Thanks for everything you do here with the company, and congrats on all the success recently.
Thanks, Bryce. Talk to you soon.
Take care.